Hello everyone, welcome back to Nimsite. Today I am back with a video that's really close to my heart. It's about an announcement as well as few tips for everyone who's in a similar journey. So we finally got a PR in Australia and this video is all about that. In this channel, I cover insights on different topics. This is particularly the Australia series where I cover about my experiences, about my life in Australia, about the various exams, everything that's Australia specific. So if you find this video helpful, make sure to subscribe. So I'll start off this video with our backstory, our whole PR timeline, so that it can be helpful for others, like how we started the journey, what happened at different times, etc. So I applied for Australian PR in the year 2018, like it was towards the end of 2018. So my partner had gone to do his masters in Australia and I thought this is the best time and I can be the applicant and I can try for the points tested visas in Australia, that is visa subclass 189 and 190. Now I have done a different video about all the visa options that you have for PR in Australia. The link will pop somewhere on the top so you can go and have a look if you're not aware about that. So in the year 2018 I got in touch with an Indian agency and I started that whole process of PR in Australia. Now the first requirement was of course passing an English exam. Now I started off with IELTS. For those of you who are not aware, to claim the maximum number of points for English, you need to get an 8 across all 4 in IELTS. That is listening, reading, writing and speaking. Now I was just not able to crack an 8 in writing. I was falling short either by 7.5 or 7. So I couldn't crack that 8 in writing. And that's when I was made aware that there is another exam called PTE for Australian migration. Now IELTS that time just had the paper-based format and I was not able to get that 8 in writing in the paper-based format. And PTE on the other hand was online computer-based format. So I gave that a go. I gave it the first time. I couldn't manage my time properly and I ended up missing few questions towards the end. And in PTE you are penalized heavily, even though if your exam is all good, if you miss some questions, especially the last few questions, you won't be able to get the required threshold. So I gave that exam again and this time I scored a perfect score in all 4, that is 79, which is equivalent to 8 in IELTS. I scored that, so I secured 20 marks for my English. So that is done. Then I got marks for age, educational qualification and all of that together. At that time I couldn't claim points for my experience. Now if you are in IT sector, you are assessed by a body called ACS. Now what ACS does is that it deducts 2 years from your total experience. It considers 2 years as probationary or training period. It doesn't consider that as your experience. And if you need to get minimum points for experience, you need to have 3 years. So that means if I have like a total experience of 5 years, 2 is deducted, 3 is left, only then I can claim the minimum points for work experience, that is 5 points. So I couldn't claim that during that time. So I went ahead, lodged my EOI with this Indian agency that we were in touch with at 70 points and waited, didn't really get a reply back. Now it was all about waiting and seeing if there is any reply for our expression of interest. Then after that year, towards the end, I was finishing my 5 years in my company so that I could gain that 5 points as I mentioned, and I did that. So now I was at 75 points and during that time threshold was around 80 points. Now what was happening was like a cat and mouse game. Some people were lucky, some people had just the point that was required during that time and they ended up getting their visas, like my contacts and etc. But I couldn't gain that the cutoff that was required. And then when work experience and everything happened, Then the next was comparing like what extra can I do to get that threshold or the cutoff that is required for Australian migration. That is when there was a rule change. There was a change in rule about partners. So if you're a single applicant, you get 10 points. If your partner can get the skills assessment done, still you get 10 points. And if your partner cannot do the skills assessment but can ensure that they have competent English, you get 5 points. So that's what we did. So my partner, we couldn't get a skills assessment done because he worked in a different field that was not there in their list. So he was doing his masters as well. So what we did is he gave the English exam again, and this time, since the IELTS academic was not valid, he gave the IELTS general and he scored the required threshold and all, and we got 5 more points. So that took our total to 75 points. But again, the threshold that time had gone up to 90, 95 points, etc. So we were still waiting. And then finally I visited Australia on a tourist visa, and I gave the NATI exam as well. Now I've also done a video about the NATI exam. NATI exam is like a translation exam, Hindi to English, English to Hindi. Hindi was my chosen language, so that's why I gave the exam in Hindi, and I got the required score that's needed for NATI, and I again gained 5 more points. So now our total was up to 80 points. So in the year 2019, like while my tourist visa was still ongoing, and I and my partner were living separately, like he was in Australia, I was in India, we took the decision that I'll leave my job in India and I'll move to Australia on the tourist visa itself, since we were still waiting for our PR to happen and things to clear. So I left my job towards the end of 2019 and came to Australia on a tourist visa. I could stay at a time for 3 months only, and then I had to make the exit and again come back to Australia. So just before COVID happened, I moved to Australia, and then towards the end of the 3 months made an exit to Indonesia and then came back again so that I can stay another 3 months. During this time we thought that what are our options to continue living in Australia. So we applied for a student visa again for my partner, and this time I was also added as a dependent so that I can get full working rights, since he was doing his masters in Australia and he had limited working rights. So we filed for a student visa again. We had to show some expenses to support both of us, our 1 year worth of expenses, our flight tickets, all those kind of things, and it was a good enough amount that you had to show in your bank for your student visa, dependent visa to get approved. So we got a final student visa in like about a month or so, and I finally had full work rights in Australia. So while I was here also, I had initially on the tourist visa itself, I had started attending meetups. I had started networking with people. I had started attending my industry meetups, getting to know more people and seeing if there was any company that was willing to sponsor me. And that continued. And when I got my work rights in Australia, I initially started working at a retail petrol station as customer service representative. I continued working there. I worked few hours. I got to know people, got to know the culture, interacted with the people. Meanwhile, I was also attending interviews, boot camps, etc. So cut to 2020 end, I finally attended interviews, and there was finally a company that was willing to take a chance on me with my fixed term visa. So I had my visa valid till the student visa was valid, although we'll get a post study 2-year work visa as well, like a 2-year work visa after the student visa expires. So total during that time the visa was valid till that time only. I cleared all the interviews and I got my first full-time job in Australia. It was a really happy moment for me. It was, after all the struggle and the wait, finally got my job in Australia. While we were still waiting for PR to happen, my EUI, my PT, my ACS, everything had expired and I had to redo all of that again. It was still a long wait before things happened. I was still hopeful because the cutoff threshold during that time was around 90 points, but there was talks that it may come down to 80-85 points since the borders are closed, and they were actually looking for skilled migrants, etc. So after completing about a year in the current company and gaining 5 more points for my Australian experience, I talked to my manager if the company is willing to sponsor, and after review and consideration they agreed. And finally my process for employer sponsored visa started. So the visa subclass is 186. That's a direct entry towards permanent residency. Since I had previous years experience, so the condition for that is around 3 years of work experience, and I had done my ACS as well, so I was ready with my skills assessment. And English, unfortunately or fortunately, English, scoring that high marks of 8 and all is not really required for 186 visa. You just need 6 across all. So you just need to have competent English. So I already had that as well. So I was ready to lodge my employer sponsored visa. So my company helped in lodging that. There is, few expenses and everything that's in consideration. I'll cover that part in a different video. And finally, as soon as the visa application was lodged, I got my bridging visa. I was eligible for Medicare as well. Medicare is access to the public health system. You get free treatment in all the public hospitals, etc. So I was eligible for that as well. And then after waiting for around 5 months, cut to 2022 mid, like almost mid, I finally got my visa immigration grant. So I had finally got my PR in Australia. So I and my partner both were a part of that same visa application that happened through the company. So both of us immediately got our PR. So that was the whole journey and the timeline. And I'll place some of the links also in the description section if you want to refer, like which visa subclass was it, what are the conditions, etc. So how much time did it take in total? I would say it took about 3 to 4 years for PR to happen. But there were a whole lot of factors that contributed, like, before COVID, the points threshold kept on increasing because of the increased competition, because of, they were trying to reduce the places in migration. The government had brought new rules and they had changed rules. So there were not much things that were in my favor. And there was some change of points as well. Like I said, they had brought points to, give single applicants more points or to take away points from some other area, etc. So every time I tried to gain 5 more points for the points tested visa, the threshold kept increasing. And then COVID also happened. So yeah, so things didn't work that much initially, but towards the end, I'm grateful that everything worked in my favor. In fact, I would say employer-sponsored visas are way more faster than the normal points-tested visas. It normally, for some people in my company, it took less than 3 months. Like within 1 or 2 months, also there are people who have got their employer-sponsored visas and their PR approved. So for me, it would have taken slightly more, but still, I would say everything worked out well in the end. Now, some of the mistakes or things that I would have done differently, this is for everyone who will try for PR or is in the process of trying for PR. One, I would try not to spend too much money on immigration agents, especially if you are applying from offshore. I would talk to people, I would collect data, and I would try to do this process myself. I remember spending a whole lot of money to pay to the immigration agents as well. So I would think that you can actually do the process on your own, because agents also, they try to tell you that these are the documents that they require and you need to submit all the documents to them. You need to do all the hard work yourself. So I would try to save money that way if possible. But if you're like totally clueless, you have no idea what's happening or you don't want to take a risk, then of course you should go via an agent. But there are a lot of my friends and a lot of people who have done that whole 189, 190 process on their own. So it is possible. And the second thing I would say for students who are planning to come to Australia, if you're, trying to do the points-based visas, and then if that doesn't happen, you go for employer-sponsored visas, I would say try for a regional area. try for a university that is in regional area, so that you get points for studying in a regional university. You get a post-study work visa as well. So that way is also you can try to get your PR faster. So these are some of the tips. I will all of the videos and everything that can help you in your PR process, I have it available in my channel. I'll do more videos about the cost expense process that happened during my whole PR process, about some of the tips about whether coming to Australia is really worth it or not. I'll also cover that part, like how, what has been my experience so far in Australia as well in the upcoming future. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, you can put it down in the comment section as well. I'll try to answer those questions as well. Then shared in this video is based on personal experience and research. If you enjoyed the video, like, share and subscribe. Keep watching, keep listening and continue learning.